Hey everybody, how y'all doing today? I hope that you are having a fantastic Monday. I am having a decent Monday so far. I'm busy doing homework. I'm sitting here in the tiny studio. I have my laptop and my tablet out and my notebook out taking notes. So I'm in homework frame of mind and in my life outside of the tiny studio, besides being a grad student, I'm also a journalist. So I am prepping to get started writing and doing my I have a in my outside life, my offline work. I have a column in a paper here in Florida. So I am busy putting down or jotting down ideas that I would like to explore as I put my column together. That is what my life is outside of YouTube. I know a lot of people don't talk about their world really outside of YouTube, getting really personal, because that is like my personal business. When I come into the tiny studio, I'm doing a number of things. I'm writing. I'm either writing for professionally for my career, or the career that pays my bills, or I'm busy writing materials that I hope will eventually pay my bills. So I hope you're having a great Monday. I know it's been a very difficult weekend for most of us. Um, just so much stuff going on. I mean, my goodness, so many things happening. Who did we have pass away this weekend? We had a number of people who died, who made their transition. I think Shelley Duvall was one. Um, Richard Simmons. Oh my God. Oh my God. Richard Simmons was like the king of, aerobics and, I want to say jazzercise and all of those things. And he was just awesome. Richard Simmons was just awesome. Back when Richard Simmons was at his height, I really loved him. I wasn't a big girl back then. I didn't start becoming a big girl until what, the late 90s? But back then, I should say the mid 90s, but back in the 80s, oh my God, Richard Simmons was the fitness king. So he passed away over the weekend. Dr. Ruth. Oh my God. I used to listen to Dr. Ruth every Sunday night. Yes. And I didn't listen to her necessarily because I wanted advice on, how to become intimate with someone. I listened because the questions were so, entertaining and informative, and the answers that she would provide was very informative. I mean, she would talk about a lot of things that, we take for granted today. And she believed in human beings being human beings, um, feeling that sense of openness and intimacy in those type of relationships. I don't know if I could say sex on YouTube, but well, I just said it. But Dr. Ruth, she was a really, really, she was very informative in that area, and her shows would come on. They were syndicated, and I would listen to them every Sunday night at about, I think they would come on like at 10 on AM radio. But Dr. Ruth passed away this past weekend. And then, of course, I am a girl of a certain age. So, Shannon Doherty, oh my God. Brenda Walsh herself. Oh my God. I have been following her story for a while. I have been following why I'm a 902 I am a 90210 super fan. So I've been following Shannon Doherty for a while. As a matter of fact, I remember when Shannon Doherty was on Little House on the Prairie. She was Jenny Wilder. Do you guys remember that? I want to see how much of a Shannon Doherty fan you really are. See, that's how far I go back with Shannon Doherty. But anyhow, she passed away over the weekend, and that was just, I have been following her journey with cancer, through cancer, since she was I think she was diagnosed in 2015, I believe, with cancer, with breast cancer. And then sporadically I would wonder how she was doing, what was going on with her, how was her journey, and she would give interviews to let people know how the cancer treatments was going for her, um, just to give us updates. And that last update, she was on the cover of People magazine telling us that, the cancer has spread to her brain and her bones. So when she told us that, I kind of knew then that Shannon was, you know, cancer is an ugly, ugly disease. And watching my husband go through it, the chemotherapy alone will set you back. The chemotherapy alone will truly, truly set you back. And I think that my husband, who was very, who was athletic, very healthy, he exercised, loved the gym. I'm thinking that had he not been that type of person, that even though the cancer, the chemotherapy, and the radiation knocked him out, I hate to really even think of what his quality of life would have been had he not been a person who was active, a person who was athletic, a person who was really into physical fitness and things of that nature. Because cancer and the treatment for cancer is an ugly, ugly MF, first of all. But the treatment for cancer, chemotherapy, that's a bitch too, you know? So it's necessary if that's something that you choose. And that was the road that my husband chose for himself. And I'm glad that he did. But, chemotherapy and radiation is a motherfucker. I can't believe I just said that again. But it is. It's cancer treatment is an MF. Hi, Harold. So, anyhow, oh my God, like I said, this weekend was a trip, and I was sitting back doing homework. I have a paper to write, which I am in the middle of doing right now, but I was working on my paper for class, and oh my God, my daddy called me on the phone. He said, "Girl, Tracy, are you watching the news?" And I was like, "No, Daddy, I'm doing homework." He was like, "You have to turn on the news. Trump got shot." I was like, Trump ain't get what news he watching? Sure enough, I go into the great room, turn on the TV, and there it was. And that happened. I mean, when did I turn on the TV? I turned it on like about 6:25, and so I'm guessing maybe 20 minutes before he had been shot. Man, that was some crazy stuff going on. I just was like, America is something else. America is something else. People don't like you, they will shoot you. People don't like you, they gonna try some kind of way to get rid of you. And unfortunately, we live in a country where that is what happens. It's definitely possible. I mean, because look, I mean, how many presidents have we had or former presidents that we have had, or politicians themselves who have been victimized by violence. We can go all the way back to who? Abraham Lincoln, assassinated. Who else? Wasn't there another president that was shot and killed in office? I know Abe Lincoln was one. I think somebody else was shot at in office somewhere in the 1800s. Um, and then you have what? JFK next. Who else? I think Gerald Ford was shot at. Then you had Reagan, which I really remember back in the 80s. I remember that, very much so. I don't want to be making fun of President Reagan when he got, that whole situation. But do you guys remember Saturday Night Live's episode after Reagan was shot that Saturday? Oh my God, it was like comedy gold. It was Eddie Murphy playing Buckwheat, and it was like Buckwheat got shot. And they did the whole sequence just as it was playing out when Reagan was shot. Oh my God. That is like comedy gold. I immediately thought about that over the weekend. Buckwheat is shot. Buckwheat's at the hospital. Buckwheat is dead. It was like, it was crazy. It was like a whole thing. And, oh, that's so nice. You know what, Harold? I don't have a P.O. box yet, but I will work on that this weekend. How about that? Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being a supporter, a tiny studio reporter. Reporter, a tiny studio supporter. Thank you so much, Harold. I really appreciate that. And I talked to my husband about it maybe about a month ago about getting a P.O. box. So, I'll bring it up with him again. And I'm more than likely going to do it this weekend because it's in my schedule. It's on my agenda. Thank you. But, I was just sitting back and I was thinking about that. And, a lot of people say, I was listening to President Biden speak, and he was saying, this is not what America is about. We're not about violence and things of that nature. And I have to say, I'm an African American woman, and in my opinion, America can be about violence when it wants to be. I mean, we're all about the violence. That's what we do here in America. We're a violent country, we're a violent society. And I think that when we stop ignoring that as a factor, I think that we'll be a much better nation. But we're a violent people. I mean, just think of the mass shootings that we have in this country. I mean, how many mass shootings have we had this year? We're only into month, 7? How many mass shootings have we had? And that's worth looking up. I have my laptop out right now, so I am going to look it up. Because that's one thing I think as a journalist that many are failing to do these days is really do the research before popping off. You know what I'm saying? So let me do the research on that. How many oh, there it is. How many mass shootings in America in 2024? Okay, let us see. Here we go. The U.S. has set to see another deadly year for mass shootings. All right, let me check it out. When was this article written? July 13th, 2024. Okay. So far this year, we have seen 261 mass shootings. And where does this number come from? This comes from the Gun Violence Archive. So far, we have seen 261 mass shootings, and we're just in the month of July. Last year, the total amount of mass shootings in America was 341. So this year we're at 261 Now, what did I say? Let me make sure I get that correct. In 2023, there were 340 mass shootings in America. In 2024, there have been so far 261 mass shootings. That's terrible. Now, to say that America, that we're not like that we're not a violent place, that's a big old lie, because everybody around the world know that we're a violent place. We're a violent country. We believe in everyone having a gun. We believe in you people, Americans, not just having a gun, but you have to have the type of gun that will blow somebody's brains all out. You know, we're not shooting people to stop them from entering our homes, or we're not shooting people in the leg. We're not shooting people in the arm anymore. We're not shooting people, in the foot or anything like that. We're actually blowing people away. We're actually using guns that destroys a body. You know what I'm saying? That's the type of weapons that we as Americans carry. So we are indeed a very, very violent society. So when someone that's political, someone like former President Trump, is someone attempts to assassinate them, I mean, I think it's ridiculous to sit back and say, "Oh my God, you know, oh my God, we live in a really, this is not who we are," because it is who we are. This is this is American society. This is what we do. I mean, how many of our children right now, or our teenagers are playing video games that feature violence? You know what I'm saying? I had my husband and I, we don't play that in our household. We used to tell our sons all the time, no, you can play this video game or that type of video game, but as far as video games that feature violence, shooting, grand auto theft, all of this, we did not allow our children to play that. Now, whether or not they did play it outside of our home, without our eyeballs being on top of them, that's a whole different story. But in our household, we didn't do that. Just like I never bought my sons guns. You know what I'm saying? I never bought them guns. I never did things like that, because we don't believe in the violence. Because my husband and I, we have relatives who we have relatives and friends that we lost through gun violence. As a matter of fact, we left the city of Detroit on the heels of losing someone that we really loved. A friend of ours, a really, really close friend of ours, was, went to the corner store, around the corner from his home with his daughter. And when he came back out, he was robbed. And not only was he robbed, he was shot and killed in front of his own daughter, you know? So, then, a few weeks before that, we lost somebody. There was a dispute going on their street, on their block, and they just happened to come outside on their porch to see what was going down, and they were shot and killed right there. You know what I'm saying? I lost I lost one of my cousins to violence, to gun violence. She was shot and killed, and her body was dumped. I can go all the way back in time, where a classmate of mine, I saw him on Friday in algebra. Friday night, he was killed at the school dance. Monday, his chair was empty. That's one person. His name was Vincent, by the way. Um, yep, Vincent. I think I was in the ninth grade. I was 14 years old. He died at the Valentine's Day dance, so I was almost 15. And that was in 1982. Yep. Let me see. I could tell you some stuff. Let me see. I lost another friend, through gun violence. He was shot and killed. Somebody was trying to rob him. They made him get naked in the dead of winter. Um, they shot and killed him and dumped his body in a dumpster. Yeah, so when it comes to, I've been at parties. I've been at parties. I've been to parties, I've been to clubs, I've been to parties, outside parties. What do we used to call them? Backyard parties. I've been to a backyard party and a friend of mine was shot because they wouldn't let in someone, and that person got mad and came back and decided to start shooting. You know, let me think. I mean, I can just go on and on and on and on and on and on about people I know that I have lost or who have gotten shot, dude, because of gun violence. I can really just go on. Just being a person who lived in the city of Detroit for, all my life up until 2005, I can really tell you about gun violence. Gun violence is real. I've been the person that's been in a situation or in situations where I had to run, or I had to run, or I had to get down, or I had to hide because someone had pulled out a gun and decided they want to handle a dispute through a gun, you know, which is one of the things that kind of puzzled me because as a person who has been involved in situations where there was gun violence, when that gun popped off at Donald Trump's rally, why didn't those white people run? I have never seen nothing like that before in my life. Whenever I hear a gun, I was always trained that I'm going to jump, I'm going to pop down, okay? I'm going to drop down to the floor no matter where I am. I'm dropping to the floor, okay? That is that is how you don't run because remember bullets don't have names, they don't have maps or anything. So you don't run, but you at least drop down. And so I'm watching the tape of what happened Saturday, and I don't see anybody dropping down. I don't see nobody screaming and running. I don't see any type of panic. I don't see anything. I see everybody there looking. What you looking for, and why you got your phone out? People are strange, maybe because everybody, I don't know, maybe it's because I've been in situations where there was gun violence, and I just know how to react. Maybe I have PTSD, who knows? But the way those white folks was reacting in Butler, Pennsylvania, when those gunshots rang out, they were all just standing there looking. I mean, did they think those were firecrackers or something? I don't know. I have no idea. But I'm gonna tell you one thing. I was thinking, and I was telling one of my friends this today. You know, a lot of people in media, they are afraid now because people are afraid to continue to talk about Project 2025 and what it means and what it would mean if Trump, got back into office, what it would mean for people of color or just people who are, minorities here in this country. And a lot of journalists are afraid to talk about what happened. They want to do we offer the prayers, thoughts and prayers to people who lost their life, to the guy who lost his life Saturday, who's trying to protect his family. And then, of course, you don't want to be inconsiderate. You don't want to not have empathy or anything of that nature, which is understandable, which is something that we all practice. We also practice empathy and compassion. However, people, a lot of journalists are afraid to write, especially if you are a black journalist. People are afraid to write and talk about how they, to continue to talk about Project 2025, to continue to talk about why it's important that when you don't vote the couch in November, if you're African American, that you go to the booth and you vote for Biden Harris. People are really afraid to say that because now the picture is that this kooky guy, you know, it is really about, you know, somehow liberals are roped into this situation, or Democrats are roped into this situation where they're being blamed for what happened to Trump, which is ridiculous. It's just truly, truly ridiculous. When you look at this guy, you look at his past, you look at who he really was. He fits the pattern of most of these of most of these shooters that you see, who make the news and who become infamous for doing stupid stuff like this. What is their pattern? And this is what I told my daughters the other day. I said, I bet you, number one, he's young. Number two, he's white. Okay. Number three, he's a loner. Number four, he's had some issues with being bullied or some type of low self-esteem thing going on. And then what else? He's a gun lover. I said, I guarantee you that all of those things fit the profile. That is the profile of the person that tried to assassinate Trump. And I was correct. I was absolutely on the freaking mark with it, because that's exactly who this guy was. What was his last name? Crook or something? I can't remember. But I don't even want to speak his name, because he doesn't deserve any type of any additional infamy or notoriety from me. Okay, not at all. Because he's made our lives much more difficult. He's made everything that's getting ready to happen within the next 100 and something days more difficult. So I don't want to give him any type of I don't want to hype him up. I don't want to give him any type of unsolicited I don't want to give him any type of, what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to give him what he probably wanted, you know, which is for someone to see him. He wanted some type of recognition. He wanted to be seen, you know. So I just feel like we just live in a time frame where, violence, that's this type of society that we live in. I have PTSD behind it, because I came from a city where it was, I had to deal with violence. Yeah, hey, I've been a victim of violence, so I may have PTSD, but my thing is that we live in a culture where violence is celebrated. Some of our top movies in this country this year were movies that featured violence. Just think about it. Um, the music that some of us listen to features violence. We're entertained by violence. Some of our children and adults as well, we play video games that, glorify violence. I'm a person who loves comic books and graphic novels, right? I'm really into the Walking Dead graphic novels. Or what some people call glorified comic books. I'm into Wonder Woman, things of that nature. But there's a lot of violence in some of those books. There's a lot of violence in some, and a lot of things that we take in as a society is violent. That's kind of like who we are. So to actually say that political violence is not who we are, and that's what President Biden said, that's not accurate, because political violence is exactly who we are. Violence, period, is exactly who we are. There is no way that we could have came over here and taken over this country from the indigenous peoples who lived here if there wasn't if an act of violence did not occur, if repeated acts of violence did not occur. Africans wouldn't be over here. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here if an act of violence hadn't brought me or brought my ancestors from Africa to the Americas. I wouldn't be here. That was political violence, you know? Um, my grandparents would not have made it, would not have decided to leave Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee, and I think I'm leaving something out. Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama. My peoples would not have felt it necessary to leave the warm comfort of the South to head up to the cold Midwest had it not been for political violence. They would have stayed. But instead, some of my relatives had to leave in the dark of night to get away because of political violence. You know, some of America's bloodiest and darkest moments politically violent. When I think of political violence, I think of what happened in Wilmington, North Carolina in 1898. That's political violence, the first insurrection, the first successful insurrection on American soil, 1898, Wilmington, North Carolina. Another political violence. Tulsa, Oklahoma, that was political violence. You know, that's political and judicial and economical violence. What else? Rosewood, political violence, economic violence, social violence, judicial violence. What else? Let me see. How about Lake Lanier? Lake Lanier. How about that? You know, Lake Lanier, Georgia. You know, a whole community, whole black community. White people came in there and it's torched it, burned it, looted it, killed people. Political violence. This country thrives on political violence. Let's just be honest about it. Let's be honest. Let's put the cards on the table. Let the chips fall where they may. You know, let's be honest about it. Political violence is what makes this country thrive. What makes this country thrive, and political violence is what created this country. So in order for us to uh, get rid of political violence, as President Biden said, well, first we have to go back and acknowledge that political violence is the thread that created America. That's number one. And then number two, we need to go back and, you know, apologize to people or make amends, give reparations to the peoples that we committed this political violence against. We have to do that next. Then we have to restructure our governmental system so that it works for everybody and not just for some people, which mainly the people that benefit from political violence are the same ones that are in power today. You know what I'm saying? I'll repeat myself. The people who's historically benefited from political violence are the same people or are the descendants of the people who perpetuated that type of violence upon certain peoples in order to become financially successful, to exert some type of power and authority over other peoples, mostly minorities and people who are poor. You know, so in order for things to change in this country when it comes to that, then there are certain people in power or peoples in power that have to revamp the whole entire governmental structure, Wall Street, higher education, the different pillars that create a society will have to be revamped in order to allow the acknowledgement that this country thrived on political violence and prospered from it. I mean, do you not agree? I mean, it's just a historical fact. And instead of people like my governor, Ron DeSantis, deciding that we're going to get rid of, you know, we're going to dumb down history, we're going to dumb down the children of America, of Floridians, who should really know and accept the history as it happened, instead of him deciding that he's going to pick and choose what history our children are taught, which also help to perpetuate a different type of narrative. We find ourselves in a situation where the past repeats itself because people don't know what the past is. People are not taught the past. That's why you have a lot of young people walking around saying, oh, well, there's no such thing as racism. Or you hear people say, well, we don't really need DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion in this country. You have people who say that who don't know why those type of programs were established. And then you have the growing course of people who do know why programs like DEI was created for people who are minorities because of what political violence. Most of those programs were created because the political violent the political violence that was perpetuated on minorities in this country called for programs of diversity, equity, and inclusion, programs that will help to balance the scales of equality in this country. You understand? So when you have people like my governor, Ron DeSantis, decide that we are going to dumb down education, we're going to whitewash history, and we're going to retell it for our own benefit and pocketbooks. What you do is you create a group of people who will not know what the history of America is, and then you appease a group of people who do know what the history of America really is and who has decided to buy into it and continue to profit from it and want to actively prop it up. And these are not just people who are Euro Americans. I'm talking about people who are my skin complexion as well, who buys into that, which would be what's that guy name who's here? Byron Donalds, him. Byron Donalds, Byron Douglas. I don't really particularly care. I don't know what his name is, but you guys know who I'm talking about. Him, Tim Scott, same thing. My color, but they support a program that at the end of the day, that very program is going to strip them of their power. It's going to strip them of their humanity. And that's what I say. A lot of people don't know their history. That is what's getting ready to happen if Donald Trump becomes president again. What's going to happen, and Project 2025 is implemented thanks to the Heritage Foundation, which was started by Ronald Reagan. And we all know the story behind Ronald Reagan. I lived in the inner cities in Detroit, Michigan in the 80s when Ronald Reagan was the president. I could truly tell you what that was like to see my whole community be destroyed, a working middle class community of African Americans. I could tell you what the community looked like during what we call Reaganomics. So the Heritage Foundation is not a friend of mine, shouldn't be a friend of yours. But anyhow, people like Byron Douglas, what's going to happen is because he supports this system, he supports a system that supported political violence since its inception. What's going to happen is the same thing that happened to all the black senators and congressmen during Reconstruction. Okay, by the time 1899, 1898, 1899 rolled around, there were no black senators. There were no black congressmen. There were no black mayors in the South. They were all kicked out. Ran out is what happened. They were all ran out and ran off from Washington. So Byron Douglas and Tim Scott, they think that sitting back and propping up Donald Trump and propping up Lindsey Graham and propping up the establishment is going to do something for them, when in essence they're just puppets. And at the end of the day, what's going to happen next? They're going to be run out of their position and their seat, because they're useful now, but in the future they're not going to be as useful. Their usefulness will have run out. And that's history. I mean, I'm not saying this to be saying it. I didn't create this in my mind. I read this in a history book. I read about it in a history book. Hell, you can go watch Gone with the Wind. And it listen, don't just watch Gone with the Wind, read the book. And I know a lot of black people are like, oh, I can't stand Gone with the Wind. I can't stand Gone with the Wind. You know, it's a work of racist propaganda. Read Margaret Mitchell's book, Gone with the Wind. And in that book, she tells you a lot of stuff that went down in Georgia and across the country during Reconstruction, what it was like. Because she, Gone with the Wind, is a book of fiction. You know, of course, Scarlett O'Hara is a made up character, but Margaret Mitchell, the author, based her book off of stories that she had been told by her family members who lived through the Civil War. You know, so all of those things are going to will happen again. We will find ourselves, and I'm not trying to fearmonger or anything, but we will find ourselves in a position as African Americans where we're going to be in many ways, we're going to be reverting back to what it was like to be in the South during Jim Crow. My grandmother is 90. My grandmother is 93, and she is from Monticello, Georgia. And she has told me what it was like to be a young black girl living in Georgia, living in a small town in Georgia. She's often told me, my great grandfather's land was stolen from him by some people in the white town in the town that they lived in. That's why he had to eventually run to Michigan in order to save his life, because they wanted him to sell his land, and he didn't want to sell his land because he had children. He wanted to keep his land for his children, but he was forced off his land. Had he stayed, he wouldn't have I would not have been able to I would not have met him and been able to love him as my great one of the greatest men I have ever met. But I would not have known him had he stayed there and literally fought for his land, because he was in the minority in Georgia. My grandmother told us those stories of what happened to her family in Georgia. My grandfather, my grandfather, he migrated to the Midwest. Why? Well, because one of his uncles had been lynched in Mississippi. And so my grandfather and a couple of friends, and I think he said one of his brothers, they all hitched and found, I think he said they hitched a ride to another town somewhere in Mississippi, and then found their way. They were able to work a little bit, and then they were able to get train tickets, and they were able to get on a train and come to um, arrive in Detroit, Michigan, because they heard that in Detroit, Michigan, there were jobs and that they didn't have to worry about getting strung up on a tree. Yeah. My dad, he lived in, his family lived in Jackson, Mississippi, and he told stories of what it was like to grow up. He grew up in England, and then because his stepfather was in the military, so he went from, he traveled a lot. And so his mother would send him down south to, spend time with his family, with his father, who lived in Mississippi, Jackson. And my dad used to tell stories of what it was like to be a little boy in the 50s in Mississippi, what that was like, what it was like to hear that Emmett Till was missing, or that Emmett Till's body was found in the river. You know, what that was like being a child and hearing that. My dad told me, told stories of that horror. So I like to say this. My great grandfather, his parents were slaves, American slave, or part of the American enslaved. And I have pictures of them. That was Papa Luke and his wife Anna Mae. And they were of the American enslaved. So that wasn't for me and for me and my family. That wasn't that long ago. My grandmother knew Papa Luke and her grandmother. My grandmother, who's 93. So her grandparents were enslaved, of the enslaved. My family on my paternal side, we trace our roots back to one of the enslaved. His name was Greg. That's not correct. His name was George Nelson. But he ran from his plantation and he took on the name of Ricks. And that's why my family, we have the name of Ricks. But our name is Nelson from Tennessee. And then I have a cousin who wrote a whole book about our family. It's called the Washingtons of Wessington Plantation, because there's a branch of my family that lived on the Wessington Plantation that was ran by George Washington's cousin. So I have a whole branch of my paternal family that lived there. And that's where my Native American heritage come in at, because one of my ancestors married a Native American woman by the name of Fanny. Yep. He found a picture of her and everything, and it's in his book, The Washingtons of Wessington Plantation. Look it up. So that's why I feel so strongly about certain things. And that's why I say that this country, even though the President Biden is saying, oh, this is not who we are. We don't believe in political violence. We're not that type of country. But I have to say on behalf of my ancestors that yes, we are. Yes, we are. Yes. Yes, we are a country that believes in political violence. It's what we do. It's what has been normalized. The idea is that the principle of the matter is that we have to unnormalize that type of behavior. And the way that you do that is by, first of all, acknowledging that there is a problem, and then coming up with a solution to fix it. And that's the problem. We don't really want to acknowledge that we have a problem. We don't want to acknowledge that that we have a significant problem when it comes to violence in this country. We don't want to admit to that. You may be like, what is she doing? I was changing the color a little bit, the lighting. I think that I'm trying to remember which is the better. I think the lighting is just really, really bright because it's bothering my eyes. I think that's better. And I don't have my bifocals on. Listen, Linda. I wear bifocals. And listen, I'm trying to tell you, the optometrist has suggested that I wear bifocals for a long time. But I was like, not me, child. I'm not wearing no bifocals. I'm not doing it. But I eventually realized that with all the studying that I do, all the reading that I do, I have to have some really, really good glasses. And I need to really take care of my my vision. So I finally broke down and I got the bifocals. But these bifocal lenses are the no lines lenses. So you really can't tell that my glasses are exactly bifocally, but they are in fact bifocally. And I'm going to have to clean them. I have some cleaner, but I need some tissue so I can clean it. But anyhow, I'm going to get back to my homework assignment. I've already kept you on the line for it's 50 minutes past the time that I started. So I'm going to hop off of here, off of this live, and I am going to get back to doing my homework, because homework is where the dream work happens. I really think so. But, let me know what your thoughts are about what's going on. It's really unfortunate that, that I think he was a retired firefighter. It's really unfortunate that he lost his life. You should be able to engage in and participate in political dialogue in this country without fearing for your life. You really should, you know. And unfortunately, that's not the case. And, it never was the case, because then I have to think about how Ida B. Wells Barnett, she was an African American journalist back in the late 18th, early 19th century. And Ida B. Wells, because she engaged in political conversation and dialogue, her life was threatened. Excuse me. She was ran out of her small town in Tennessee. Her life was threatened. They told her that she came back, that she was going to be on the tree. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think who else. I mean, we can get into modern times with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and the fact that, his life was threatened all the time because he engaged in political dialogue and in political rhetoric and theology, that he believed in, you know, and other people were affected too as well, because I'm thinking that a few times when his house was bombed, his family was there, his wife and his kids, you know, political violence. Uh, Someone else comes to mind, Malcolm X. That's another one. He engaged in political dialogue too. Supported a political cause. And he was gunned down in front of his children. Dr. King was gunned down in front of his friends. Robert F. Kennedy, he was gunned down as well. Robert F. Kennedy Sr., you know. Yes, we should, and in a perfect world, we should be able to engage in political dialogue and a social dialogue. We should be able to engage in that without fearing for our lives. But unfortunately, in this country, that's not the case. We don't live in utopia America. We live in America. I'm trying to think. So many people, Medgar Evers, he's another one. He engaged in political dialogue, and he paid the price by being shot down, gunned down in the driveway of his home in Mississippi. You know, um, I can just, I could pull up some stuff, truly, and I can say what should happen, what should be the case, but here in America, it's never the case. Here in America, you know, I've written things for my column, and I've received death threats, emails of people threatening me and stuff like that. I've received it, you know. It's never a great thing in this country to engage in political dialogue or social commentary without without the full without the full knowledge that there could be repercussions. And that's sad, but that's how it goes. That's how it goes. My heart goes out to the family who lost their dad. You know, that's a tough one. You know, that's a toughie. You know, you decide that you want to, you know, go and see someone that you really admire and you respect and you like them, and you head on out to this venue, and next thing you know, you don't get to come home. You know, that's tough. That's really tough. You know, but as always, America has got to do better. America has got to do better. You know, and what does better look like? I'm gonna tell you what it don't look like. Better does not, to me, does not look like a 21st century Jim Crow. America doesn't look like that for me. You know, I know a lot of people, you know, would prefer to make America great again by having all minorities in their places, which means somewhere outside of what Euro Americans who believe in white supremacy, um, outside of them. You know, I get that part, but you know, no, no, this country that was snatched away from the indigenous peoples. No, everyone that's here, we all need to learn how to get along, and we need to learn how to live together, and we need to learn how to live in peace if possible. The main people that should be hooping and hollering and complaining about shit should be the indigenous peoples. Because hey, we're not supposed to be here. We're not supposed to be here, you know, but here we are. So, in order for us to make the best of it, we need to learn how to, if we can't love one another, at least respect one another. You know, it's something I used to tell my children. You know, I understand that you're having some struggles. You know, right now you don't like your brother, you don't like your sister, they get on your nerves. But the one thing that I am not having is disrespect. Not in my household. We respect everyone here. You ain't gotta like it. You ain't gotta like them. But you have to respect them. And I think that's where this country fails at greatly, is that we don't respect one another. We don't respect one another's privacy. We don't respect each other's rights. We don't respect people's religions. We don't respect people's walk of spirituality. We don't respect people's sexuality. We don't respect people's gender. We don't respect it, you know? And we need to start respecting people for who they are and not based on our own situations, you know? Well, I'm gonna hop off the line. My son is calling me. He usually calls me every day when he gets off work. So I'm going to answer his call. So I'm going to answer his call, or I'm going to call him back. And I'll see you guys next time here in the Tiny Studio. Don't forget to like, subscribe. And like I said before, I do post videos, but I'm not really filming anymore because it seems to me as if my Tiny Studio guests like to watch me on the lives instead of actually, you know, watching the videos. I should say, what I'm saying is that me actually filming a video, you know, I get more views when you guys show up for a live like this. I get more views this way. And I don't know why that is. My daughter says it's because we live in the era of TikTok and that people just like, TikTok videos and whatnot. And so people really like this live stuff. So I mean, okay, I don't mind doing it. It's fine with me. However, I do want to say this. I'm going to create a video or film a video about the spring equinox blanket that I'm working on with my crochet blanket because I think I talked about it the other day, but I'm making progress on the granny square panel that I'm working on. So I do want to make a video about that. And I just ordered two more Sassy Joan necklaces to go with my outfits that I have planned out for the anniversary trip that my husband is taking me on next week. And so, but you know what? I don't know if Sassy Jones gonna like this, but I found some Sassy Jones. I found some people some persons who own some Sassy Jones jewelry who wants to sell them. I found them on eBay. So I have I was on eBay, doing what I usually do, haggling with the seller, but I just purchased some really, really cool Sassy Jones necklaces, some really nice bibs from a couple of sellers, eBay sellers. So I do want to make a video showing you guys that um, those purchases. And I also wanted to make film a video about some dreadlock topics. So, Mr. Harold, I am going to answer your question in a upcoming dreadlock love video. And it was something else. Someone sent me another question, and I am going to make a video about it. Yeah, I know. I keep some chapstick on my lips. And after that situation that I told you guys about a couple of weeks back where my lips got really dry and my lips got so dry and so chapped up that it looked like I had herpes simplex 25. Child, I keep some chapstick around here because I do not want my lips to get that dry ever again. And I've never had that problem before, unless it was I want to say it had to be bad makeup, but I don't bad lipstick, but I don't think so because I keep pretty current with my lipstick, and that was some new lipstick that I used, but it could have been the lipstick. But all I know is that it dried my lips out so bad that I now keep chapstick with me at all times. And me, I'm obsessive, I should say, obsessive and excessive. So I have chapstick here in the tiny studio. I have chapstick in my little cosmetic bag that I put in my purse or my handbag. I have chapstick in my vehicle. I have chapstick on the side of my bed. So you know me, when I get obsessive, I get obsessive. All right, so I'm going to head on out. I'm going to have some tea. I don't know what I'm cooking for dinner today because it's getting late. So I'm thinking that we're going to probably have, maybe some egg sandwiches. I mean, it's Monday. It's Monday. Who's cooking a big meal on Monday? Not me. And it's not like my kids are going to be eating a big meal anyway because they're grown. So my daughter just ordered I think she ordered some oysters and I think she ordered some oysters and some crab legs from some place about an hour ago. So I know those two kids aren't going to be eating. So it's really going to come down to me and my husband. And lately he hasn't really had too much of an appetite. So he's not really, picky about what he wants to eat. So like yesterday, he wanted some Popeyes chicken. He had an appetite for that. And as a matter of fact, I think there are some pieces of chicken left and some coleslaw from yesterday. Dinner is served. All right then. So you had some Popeyes too? Yeah, Popeyes is delicious. I'm gonna have to tell you, I love me some Popeyes chicken. I try not to eat it all the time or a lot. As a matter of fact, this is the first time I've had some Popeyes this year. I can really Yes, this is the first time I've had some Popeyes this year. And I try to stay away from a lot of Popeyes and Kentucky Fried Chicken and Publix chicken. Yeah, and the reason why is because it's fried, and I try to stay away from that because I've been losing weight and I'm doing really, really well at losing weight, and so I'm trying to stay away from the fried foods. But yesterday, Popeye's chicken, that was something my husband wanted. He had a craving for, and since this whole cancer situation has gone down, whatever it is that he wants, is if it's going to help him to put his weight back on, I go ahead and acquiesce to it. All right, so I am out of here. It's 5 o'clock. I think. Is it 5 o'clock? Or is it 6 o'clock? I don't know what time it is. I think it's almost 6 o'clock. And you know what that means. If it's 6 o'clock, child, it's time for me to not only finish my homework, but I am going to have a little bit of a drinky drink. You guys know what that means, right? A little drinky drink. And I'm going to finish up my paper and, move on to other things. So I hope you guys have a great Monday. Have a great week. I guess I will see you guys again on Wednesday, maybe Wednesday or Thursday. I'll see you guys there at that time period here on uh, YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.